to the Mindset Michelle TV show. We're so super excited to have you join us for yet another incredible show with today's extra special guest, somebody that is, I'm sure, going to share so many insights and wisdoms about how to create that successful mindset. So our special guest today is the wonderful Derrick McManue. Hello, Derrick.
Hi, how are you, Michelle? Sensational to be here. I've enjoyed your previous podcasts, so I've been listening in. Love your interview style and love the things that people share. And
it's such an honour and a privilege to have you here. And for those of you that aren't quite aware, Derrick has got, he's not quite as mild-mannered as he may look there on the screen. He's got quite an interesting background, and one that I'm sure we will get to know and like even more so as we get to know him a little bit more. But he has been in the Special Counter-Terrorism Force and has worked as a sniper with the South Australian Police Special Operations, or the STAR Force. And he was shot at one stage 14 times. And as you can see, he survived being shot 14 times. He's now a motivational and inspirational speaker, and I'm sure got a lot of really incredible insights into how to create that successful mindset. So Derrick, please share with everybody who you are and how you came to be shot 14 times and today to being that inspirational speaker, sharing the special messages with everyone.
Okay, so let's just cut to the chase right up front. I am one of the good guys. I am not a criminal. All right, so
in case we were confused.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so many people go, were you a crook? Were you a good guy? So yes, I was in the police star group, and that is high-risk arrest, hostage siege, counter-terrorism, VIP security to the Queen at different times when she visited South Australia, and all sorts of other stuff that we did. We went to arrest a guy back in 1994. He clearly did not want to be arrested, and he made it very clear in his actions. We went to his house, knocked on the door. He started shooting. He fired 18 times. He hit me 14 times. And he was using a Chinese military rifle. And the rifle was firing Chinese military bullets, the same as they use when they go to war. And I was then lying on the ground for 3 hours with multiple massive life-threatening injuries, including 2 bullets in my stomach, and I lost 45 centimeters of bowel all up. 1 bullet through my left forearm, severed the main artery in my left forearm, a bit of shrapnel in my right wrist, and that severed an artery in my right wrist. 2 bullets in my left thigh, 1 bullet went through my right Achilles tendon, took out 80% of the thickness of my Achilles, and I still only have 20% of my Achilles thickness left on the right-hand side. And the other bullets I just call little bits and pieces. But I was hit 14 times within that 5 seconds, and then lying on the ground for 3 hours, managing those injuries. The first doctor to get to me said he didn't know whether I was dead or alive when he first saw me. He said I wasn't breathing. There was no color in my body. He couldn't find a pulse. And he thought I was already dead. But as he was making this assessment, he said there was a flicker of my eyelid, and what he described as I took my last breath, my last gasping breath. And he and the medical team worked their magic, brought me back to stable, and they did that while in direct line of fire. Bullets are whizzing around their ears. So they are absolute heroes for standing there. One of my mates from Star Group stood between the doctor and the shooter, so that if the bullets come that way, he would be having a flat vest on, so he felt he would be okay, and he would protect the doctor as well. So there are a lot of heroes that I have to thank for being here today. But it really is, the deeper story is really quite remarkable. But believe it or not, it also has so much hilarity in it. When I speak at conferences and seminars and in-house events, people are cracking up, laughing at the fact that I got shot 14 times. And as much as, I use a little bit of humor in what I do, I never am dismissive of the risk, the importance, the seriousness of the event that occurred. But there is, when we can break the tension with a bit of humor, our mind can relax, our body can relax, and we can do what we need to do to get the result we want. And that's part of the mindset, is knowing how to just break the tension of adversity, overwhelm, fear, and then just focus on getting the outcome you want.
Wow. And you know, I don't think you can get much more human than, you know, getting the outcome of breathing and coming back to life. And you know, as you were speaking and sharing that really quite challenging or difficult situation where you've been shot 14 times, you know, I can't even begin to imagine, and to come back from that, then, you know, all of the mental strength, not just the body strength, but the mental strength to come back from, you know, I was this close to death, or I should have died, or I this or that, all of the different stories. So I really applaud, you know, that journey that you went on, and recognizing, of course, the heroism of those around you to bring you back and to take control back of the situation from the shooters. So, yeah.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah.
One of the things that you just said there, that there was physical strength and there was mental strength. A lot of people look at the STAR group. We are, and this is when I was in STAR group, I'm not so much anymore, at an elite level of fitness. There's no two ways about it. We are compared to AFL footballers and Olympians for the fitness that we're required to do our job. And everybody defaults to, oh, you were so fit, that's what helped you survive. The doctor said, I lost so much blood, he doesn't know how I'm alive. In fact, I've got a recording of him talking to Channel 9 News, saying all the textbooks say that Derrick's heart should have stopped. The only reason Derrick's heart didn't stop is he hadn't read the textbooks. So the physical was one side, and that's certainly part of it. But the mindset was the major thing. And as we discussed today, I'll tell you some of that mindset that I had before, during, and after. Because, you know, spoiler alert, I survived. That's one thing. But another spoiler alert, I went back to fully operational with STAR Group at that elite level again after such massive injuries and 2.5 years of physical rehabilitation. The thing that surprises many people is I did not suffer anxiety, depression, PTSD, or any of those psychological effects. I had some instances of them happening, but my mindset was able to manage them, rationalize them, and bring them back into the context of, oh, okay, I had that horrible thought, but that's normal, and so I'm not worried about it. And it wasn't a continuing process. And so within 3 months of the shooting, I had a meeting with a psychiatrist, one of the best in Australia for major trauma. And he cleared me psychologically to go back to work the next day. He also said that I didn't need any ongoing therapy unless I wanted to have some. And so he cleared me psychologically and said I didn't need to come back and see him again. And that, the conversation that I had with him, the things that he distilled from me and I picked his brain about, is where I now talk about mindset. And my mindset is going beyond resilience. Resilience is our ability to bounce back after things go wrong. I like to talk about optimal performance. What's the very best we can possibly do within the challenges we can realistically expect to encounter in our day-to-day life.
Wow. And Derrick, there's just so much in what you're sharing, and so many pearls of wisdom and gems, because yes, there's not many people I have the privilege or the honor to meet that have been through your types of experience and are able to share that, you know, after 3 months they were able to be cleared psychologically to go back, and after 2.5 years to have completed the complete physical rehab to be back to full, you know, STAR level elite fitness. Before we get into some of the gems that you'll share around that, though, I am interested, given that, you know, sometimes we talk to people and it's about when they were younger, when they were this, when they were that, they may have had different ideas about what success meant to them. I'm keen to hear from you with your different view, again, having been, shot 14 times. You may have a very different, view on what does success now mean to you?
Interestingly, a lot of people say, wow, since you've been shot, you must have had one of those aha moments. You must look at life differently. We have a police psychologist who, being in Star Group, he did assessments on us every 12 months to make sure we weren't going down with stress and depression or anything else. And he did a lot of testing on me prior to the shooting. And then after the shooting, prior to go back into the police department, I was certainly cleared by the psychiatrist, but I had to be cleared by the police psychologist as well. So I went and had a conversation with him. And at the end of the conversation, he cleared me to go back. And then I said, right, I want to know, you've done the testing before the shooting, you've done the testing after the shooting. I want to know, is there any change in my personality, in my attitude, in my approach to life? And if there is a change, what is that change? And he looked at me, he was pan-faced, absolutely deadly serious. He said, Derrick, you were crazy before, you're crazy now, there is no change. And so I'd like to think that my definition of success has not changed either. And for me, the definition of success is enjoying my life. Enjoying my life. And that is what it all is to me. And part of my enjoyment of my life has always been to contribute to others. At the age of, in my youth, I was doing, things as well. But from the age of 20, I started into gymnastics, and then I got into coaching gymnastics, and then I was running a gymnastics club. And from there, it has just continued in this avalanche of just being able to give back to other people in any way I can. And recently, I've been ambassador to the White Ribbon Association. I have worked with motor neuron disease sufferers. I've worked with people who have Down syndrome, all in a voluntary capacity. And these days, I ride tandem bikes with vision impaired people on the back. We don't trust them to go on the front these days. But they wouldn't be able to get out and ride unless there was somebody on the front of the bike for them. And this is all voluntary capacity, and I just love being able to do it. But it is about happiness. So long as we are happy, contributing, then that's success for me.
And I love that. I can think that you're in this wonderfully unique position to have seriously tested, the before and the after of not just the 14 bullets, but having experienced quite a dramatic situation to your life, and then being able to quite clinically test it and test, has it changed fundamentally who you are? So I love how you had that clinical proof that you were still crazy. But also that you were able to use that proof to reflect on, well, what is success? And success is still enjoying life and giving to others. Yes, sir.
I'll just jump in there very quickly and just add to that. What is happiness to me is not happiness to someone else, right? What I find fun, what I find enjoyable in my life is not what other people do, because very few people want to go into Star Group and go out and chase people, bad guys with guns. And I have two male friends who love being the stay-at-home dad and being absolutely immersed in family. I have a stepdaughter who is a CEO of a multinational company, and my own biological children are doing very well in their realms. And everybody has their own definition of what is fun for them. And I think that is the essence of success, being comfortable with who you are and what you enjoy, and just immersing yourself in it without being worried about how other people judge you as to whether you're successful in what you're doing. Because I'm successful in what I'm doing, you should be trying to do the same. No, just do what you enjoy, and that's what success is.
And I love that, because as you've been speaking, and I'm not sure if it's part of the world that you come from, where with that regular testing, etc., you develop, in a sense, much more heightened awareness of who you are and what is and I don't want to use the word normal, but what is your state of well-being, if you like, because of the stresses and the roles that you've been in. So that constant testing, etc., I think may have helped with that increased level of awareness about who you are and how you're going. I'm interested then, with such an incredible story and a story of resilience and rebirth and craziness and enjoyment, what you then would like to share with people about the tips for creating a successful mindset? Because I do feel like you may come at it again from a fairly different lens.
Yeah, I talk about mindset on a regular basis, and there's so many different angles that we can come from. But for me, there are 5 drivers for success. And the first one is a sense of optimism. Always having that reason to believe that something better is out there, something good is out there, and that we want to push for it. As soon as we lose that sense of, oh, there's something enjoyable that I want to chase, pursue, or maintain, then we lose hope for the future. A lot of people say, optimism, is that the same as hope? Hope I see as passive. We are hoping, wishing, praying for someone to do something to happen. Sense of optimism is hope with a plan, right? There is a reason to believe that this is something that's going to happen. And I believe that I've always maintained a sense of optimism throughout my life. And don't get me wrong, there's been points in my life where I've gone, oh my gosh, what's this all about? Can I achieve it? There's been doubt, there's been tears, there's been fears. But I always come back to getting a good rest, good sleep, refocusing, and coming back to what is good in my life and what can I want. One of the things that I grew up with as a child was a parent. My father continuously said, no matter what was going on, where's the silver lining? Every dark cloud has a silver lining. And I think that's just something that's burned into my brain, that no matter what's going on, there is a silver lining. And as I said, you know, some of the story of me being shot, people crack up laughing. I think it's because I was open at the time of dealing with these challenges to see the silver lining, to see the hilarity in it, even though it's a massive trauma. But it is just that way of breaking the tension and going, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. Oh, but there is this sense of optimism to stay there. The second driver.
Before you go on, I just want to reflect on what a wonderful, wonderful suggestion there around the sense of optimism. So having that sense that there's a silver lining. So understanding that there's ups and there's downs and there's challenges, and that's part of life and part of being human. But having that optimism, and I really wanted to reflect again as well on the difference that you were so beautifully sharing there between hope and optimism. So hope being like wishes and dreams, etc., but optimism being like hope, but with a plan. And I think that this is something that is, and why I wanted to stop and really reflect on it, because I think that that is something that people may not necessarily understand about when you're talking about optimism. It still has a plan, and it still has some action steps and a direction that you're giving your energy to or your focus to, rather than just hoping. The best example I ever heard was about hoping to get a new car or dreaming about a new car, as opposed to walking out there and going into a car yard to see and look at the cars to help you work out which car you particularly wanted. And that always seemed to me a really good example of, you know, I hope I get a new car, I dream about a new car, but, you know, you're sitting in your lounge room hoping and dreaming as opposed to walking around the car yard. So that's fabulous. And your second suggestion, Derrick?
Well, just to follow on what you're saying there, it made me think a lot of people would be thinking, how can you have a sense of optimism when you've been shot 14 times? What is there to look forward to? And so I'm going to try and tell this story very, very succinctly. I was lying on the ground for 3 hours, body bleeding, body closing down. I could feel there was no energy in my legs, my arms. I got down to the point of knowing that the blood was just being supplied. I'd lost so much blood, it was just going to kidneys, lungs, heart and brain. And I started thinking, what's life going to be like if I get out of this? And I started thinking, I may spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair. And if that's the way it has to be, anything better than death is going to be a bonus. And that was a philosophy I had prior to and coming into this. Anything better than death is a bonus. And intuitively, so I didn't know these 5 drivers beforehand, but intuitively, where's the silver lining was burning in my mind. And I started thinking, okay, if I'm going to live the rest of my life in a wheelchair, it's not going to be as exciting as it has been, but how can I make it interesting? And so as I'm lying on the ground, bleeding, pools of blood on the ground next to me, the shooter is still shooting and bullets being pounded through bricks above me, I started thinking to myself, actually, if I live the rest of my life in a wheelchair, I play basketball already, so I could put basketball together with wheelchair, and I may be able to play wheelchair basketball, and that'll be something. And then my police egos kicked in, and I thought, actually, I'll play pretty good basketball. So if I can put pretty good basketball together with wheelchair, I may be able to make the Paralympic team. Now, the Paralympic team are traveling the world playing basketball, and I'm not traveling the world at the moment. So this may actually be a bonus. I'll get to see the world. Even though it's from a wheelchair, I'll get to see the world. And then police have got an ego about this size. Star Group have got an ego, way out here and way off screen. That ego started kicking in. And while I was on the ground, bullets pounding through the bricks, my blood pouring out and pooling on the ground next to me, I thought to myself, if I make the Paralympic team, they're already damn good. If I can add a little bit to it, we may end up in the Paralympic finals. I may end up with a gold medal as a result of being shot. Now, this was on the edge of me about to pass out. So I was never giving into, oh my God, I'm about to die, I may as well just give up. It was always having that sense of optimism. This is horrible where I am, but how can I make it better? How can I find that will to fight for something better than what I have at the moment? And that was one of the things that kept me going. The true thing that kept me going was wanting to get back to my children. That was my main focus. So I'll just throw that in there, and that's another story altogether. But that perspective of thinking about wheelchair basketball, Paralympics, gold medal, a lot of people start saying, okay, I can now see where that sense of optimism kicks in, even under such massive pressure.
And you reminded me, even when you were first describing that, coming back from 3 hours of lying there, as you're very aware that the blood is leaving and your body is shutting down, that's quite a long time to have that kind of sense of your mortality, etc. But I was also struck by Viktor Frankl's book about man's search for meaning, and how I really do feel like people that, and you described it so beautifully then when you actually got to the point where you were winning Olympic medals for wheelchair basketball. But it's that, well, if I can't do this, then I'll do this, and then I'll do this. And that sort of storytelling of making the best of the situation that you're in, and then dreaming and kind of adding on to it. And when I read that book, and he was talking about the people in concentration camps that survived and those that didn't, you reminded me, as you were describing, lying there, and as the doctors and everybody said, you should have been dead. But you weren't dead because your spirit and your mind was still alive. You were off winning Olympic medals. So your spirit and your energy, it was, you could have been 24 bullets and you still have lived, because your energy of life was still planning and taking over the basketball world from the wheelchair.
Absolutely. So the second one, influence. We've got to believe in our ability to influence that future. If we do not have any influence over the future, we may as well just sit on our backside and wait for things to happen around us. So we've got to find out what we can do to influence it, to make it happen. And the more influence that we have, the more optimism we're going to have. Now, we can't influence everything in the world. Global financial crisis, COVID, there's nothing I could do to influence those. But my optimism came from knowing that others were dedicated to finding a solution to it. It wasn't that I was just sitting back hoping something would happen. I had a reason to believe that a solution would be found eventually. We had the whole world working on COVID solutions. So there was a sense of optimism. And don't get me wrong, I was still well overwhelmed by what was going on. but there was still that maintaining that sense of optimism, because I believed there was someone influencing the future as I saw it. But the more we can influence our own future by the choices we make and the actions we take, and taking responsibility for the consequences of our action, both good and bad, and then the future afterwards gives us that ability to have a belief in our ability to influence things.
Fabulous. And I really love influence is one of those really important ones. I think sometimes as I'm getting a bit older and worry about climate change and the future of the planet and all of that, one of the things that I keep reminding myself about is that younger people who are even more technologically savvy than myself, they will come up with solutions and ideas that I haven't even begun to think of, because the technology is so different and their brains are going to be wired different to think of different solutions. So although it may feel a bit much with what's going on at the moment in the world, history has shown us that it's the next generation that come up with the next solutions based on the technology and everything available at that time. So I really hear when you're talking about the influence and trusting and knowing that already you can start to see, for example, younger people or people coming up with solutions to getting the plastic out of the oceans and things like that. Mm-hmm. Things that even a couple of years ago you were like, well, at some point it's going to be all one big plastic bottle in every ocean. But now they're starting to clean it up, and it's because of the smart technologies they're able to use. Oops.
Okay, I just froze there. I heard everything you said, but I just saw my screen freezing, so my apologies for that. No, I agree. The fact that technology is advancing, it is reinforcing of that sense of optimism about the future.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And your third suggestion?
The third one is meaning. Making sure that whatever we do in life, we have meaning. And this is when it comes back to that definition of success. What is your definition of success is what is meaningful to you. It doesn't need to be meaningful to anybody else. There are a lot of people, I'm a very competitive cyclist, and I mix with other competitive cyclists, and some of them go, well, you're riding tandem bikes, so you don't get all that time to go out and train. So, you know, if I were you and you wanted to be really competitive, I would give up the tandems, and that has no meaning for me. I love to be competitive, but I want to ride the tandems. It has a meaning for me. I've got connections with mates, and that's male and female mates through this that I just want to maintain, and it has meaning for me. It doesn't have meaning for other people. They don't get it. I don't care. And that's where we've all got to get to, is understanding what is meaningful to us. Doesn't matter what anybody else thinks of it. We've got to follow what is meaningful for us. Because if we're doing something to try and prove something to somebody else, or trying to make ourselves look bigger and better, even though we don't care about what that is that we're doing, if that goes wrong, we start feeling defeated. We start feeling like idiots. Oh my God, everybody's laughing at me. But if we're doing something that is meaningful to us, and that goes wrong, we will go, I don't care, watch me. I'm going to make this happen. We will keep on engaging in what is meaningful for us, what we find enjoyment in. And that, you know, it could be riding tandem bikes, it could be planting flowers in the garden, it could be, you know, whatever you wanted. But we've got to know what that meaning is for us, because that will be one of the drivers to keep us pushing.
I love that, because yes, comparisonitis is how I describe it. But yeah, comparisonitis can stop people from doing things, and I love that third point of yours around meaning, finding what is meaningful to you, and not comparing your sense of meaning or enjoyment of something with somebody else. That's another fabulous tip.
Yeah, thank you. The fourth one is planning. Now, planning, sometimes people get overwhelmed. Oh my gosh, how much planning do I need to do? And I say that planning is in context. My AirPod just, apologies for that. So planning needs to be put into context. The bigger the challenge, the more the planning that is required.
Okay, so if it's something that is going to be the equivalent of costing you $10 in cash, $10 worth of embarrassment, $10 worth of risk to whatever it might be. If it's only $10, who cares? Have a crack. Doesn't need to be big planning. Just go for it. The bigger the risk, if it's getting up to $100,000, it gets up to $1 million, whatever your context is for a lot of risk, then we need to start sitting down and doing more planning. But my basic planning for the shooting was having some idea of what I was going to deal with, some idea of how I was going to deal with it. So it's about having open, honest, confronting conversations with ourselves about the choices we're making, the actions we're about to take, and the possible consequences of them, both good and negative consequences, right? And then having an idea of what the outcome might be if those consequences do happen. What would the future look like afterwards? And my planning was that I had been in some major incidents before where my life had been on the line, and I was able to stay calm and rational and do things that other people go, wow, how did you think that through? And so I reflected back on those situations and said, what was it that I did? How did I implement that calm sense of rationale and things? And I love talking about what all those things were. But I analysed those, worked out what they were, and then I brought them forward and said, if I do get shot, how will I want to handle it physically, mentally, and emotionally? Now, people say physical, yep, we prepare for that. Mental, I see as the intellectual side. That is the policies, the processes, the procedures, legislation, all the processes that we need to know how to implement something. The emotional is one of the things that we need to plan for the most. Because when the emotion takes over, all our basic planning goes out the window. Because when our emotion goes high, our rational thinking comes low. And when when our rational thinking is low, this is irrational thinking. This is fight and flight. This is absolute panic mode. This is not when we do this. Sorry, this is not when we do the smart stuff. This is when we do the dumb stuff, right? This is when we look back and we go, oh my gosh, why did I do that? I know better. But our emotions are high, our rational thinking is low. We can't cut our emotions out. They're natural. And if you think about this shooting, it was almost 30 years ago. 30 years ago, big, tough men in my realm of occupation were told you don't have emotions. We don't get affected by those. We are training you tougher than that. Fortunately, these days we're more aware that we do have emotions. We do get affected. So it's not about trying to say we cut the emotions out. It's about saying when the emotions go high and the rational thinking is low, what do I need to do to bring the emotion back down and the rational thinking back up? Now, under the stress of being shot, they're probably not going to get onto an even plane where you can go, oh my gosh, this is great. But the closer you can get them, the more chance you've got of making rational decisions that you're going to be proud of later. But that is coming with a lot of vulnerability about, oh gosh, I made a choice. It put me in a bad situation. The bad consequences happened. Now I've got to take the responsibility of driving my outcome for finding the success I want. That does involve having assistance from other people, but we've got to stay in charge of driving it and making sure it goes the way we want. But planning, basic planning, comes down to some idea of what you're going to deal with, some idea of how you're going to deal with it. So I accepted going into Star Group, there was some chance that I may be shot and injured, maybe shot and killed. And I had that conversation with my wife about if I died, what would her life look like? But I then said, with those risks, maybe shot and injured, or maybe shot and killed, if I do get shot, how would I like to manage it physically, mentally, emotionally? And reflected on the past of what I've done well, brought that forward to the future. But that's the basics of planning. But that means that we need to address the big things that are happening in our life.
And I love it. And there's so much I could unpack there that I just want to reflect back on the key thing that you were stressing and sharing about there, which was physically, emotionally, and mentally. You were preparing. So when you were planning, it wasn't just writing tasks and activities on a sheet. You're actually walking through all through those areas. If I was to say to you, though, what's the fifth point very quickly, what would be your fifth suggestion?
Support. Being willing to throw your hand in the air and ask for support. We can do a lot of stuff ourselves, but we can't do everything. No matter what we do in life, we're always going to involve someone else. but we need to be big enough and bold enough and vulnerable enough to throw our hand in the air and say, hey, listen, I need some advice here. This is bigger than what I've ever dealt with before. This is something new to me. And it doesn't matter whether it's shooting or whether it's raising a baby for the first time. Because I remember when we had our children the first time around, I'm going, oh my gosh, what do I do? I had to get advice. I still, I loved it, but I still needed to go away and say, can I have some support? Let's not get too big for our boots and say, I've got this. Be open enough to ask questions.
Fabulous. And if people did want to reach out for some support, Derrick, what's the best way to reach out and get hold of you?
Oh, listen, the most obvious way to get hold of me is get onto LinkedIn. You can always make a connection with me there. I have a website under my name, derrickmcmanus.com, and my contact details are on there. I don't care whether people ring me up to have a conversation for 10 minutes and get some advice, or whether they want to book me for a conference or an engagement or whatever. I'm very happy to chat with anyone and just give them some insight into what they can do. Again, it's me being able to give back. I seem to have this knowledge that people enjoy, and I love sharing it as well.
Fabulous. And my final question is around, what advice might you give to your younger self?
Trust myself a lot more than I ever have. And I think this is something that we all still default to. I don't think I can do anything right now. I've got to go and talk to Michele, because Michele will tell me the exact right thing to do. And I can't do anything until I talk to Michele. But I honestly believe that we all know the next step that we should take, right? We may not know the end goal or the end step, but we know the next step. And when we take the next step, the step after that becomes a little bit clearer. So we've got to trust ourselves that we can take the next step and engage with support and all the rest of it, and drive that success for ourselves. But my advice would be trust myself more.
Wow. And Derrick, it's been such an incredible gold expedition today with the 5 different suggestions that you've had, your incredible story, and ending there about trusting yourself more. So I wish I could speak with you for a few more hours, but it's coming towards the end of the show. So thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Absolute pleasure, Michele. It's an honour to be here. I've listened to your other podcasts. They're all gold, and I just hope I'm able to contribute something to that.
You've been an absolute gem, and thank you so much for coming on today. And to everybody, all the people that watch and send all of their feedback, thank you so much for your ongoing support. But for now, from my heart to your heart, be great, be fabulous, and be you.